A while ago, I made a video about the latest and hottest superhero comic, Radiant Black. That video blew past 100 views in less than 24 hours, 200 the next day, surpassing my expectations time and time again because of how positive the reception has been. So much that even Kyle Higgins tweeted out about it and showed his support. So because that video was such a massive success, I decided to double down on the Massive-verse and cover the next edition of this Toku-inspired world of heroes. Rogue Sun. A knight-inspired hero that looks like he came straight from hell. And apparently, he's been a hero in this world for a long time. Before we get into all that cool stuff with the knight and the Toku, I want to once again bring attention to the creatives behind this book. Writer Ryan Parrott of, you guessed it, Power Rangers fame. Just now hot off the trails of finishing the 100th issue of the mainline Power Ranger comic series. He's responsible for a lot of my favorite issues and stories from that universe. So you know I was already well on board when I found out he was writing Rogue Sun. And then we have artist Abel, who's worked on other original works as well as DC titles for Catwoman and Harley Quinn. And in my opinion is the absolute right artist for this specific job. Right off the bat, Abel's style is unique in all the best ways. There is an incredible attention to detail in all of the character designs, their expressions, and the way they even move. What's more, there's this filter over all the art. This kind of speck effect on all the pages that gives off the impression of the past. It's distinctive, doesn't detract from the art in the slightest, and is a very subtle decision made with clear intention. Combine that with the kinetic posing and paneling, and you have the recipe for a stunningly beautiful comic. And hey, if the art isn't enough to sell you on the comic, then let me tell you a little something else. This comic has the most unique first arc of any superhero media I have ever seen. Potential hyperbole? Maybe, but I kid you not, this first arc does not go in the way you would have expected it. Especially not at the speed it happened. But, and I'm sorry for doing this again so early into the video, before we get into the actual comic itself, I want to cover Rogue Sun's first actual appearance. In the massive crossover comic, Supermassive! Now wait a second, I hear you asking. How can Rogue Sun be part of a crossover before you even had a comic? And to answer that, let me go into some details about the comic's production. The year is 2022, the anniversary year of Image Comics, the publishers behind Radiant Black and Rogue Sun, as well as other famous icons like Spawn and Invincible. Not only that, but in February, it'd be the 1-year anniversary of Radiant Black itself. So to celebrate both anniversaries, creators Kyle Higgins, Ryan Parrott, and Matt Groom came together with their stories to create an event comic called Supermassive, a crossover comic between Radiant Black, Inferno Girl Red, and of course, Rogue Sun. Premiering a whole month before the official release of Rogue Sun's #1, the crossover introduces us to Marcus Randolph Bell, the holder of the Sunstone, which lets him take on the armor and become Rogue Sun. He's old, experienced, and has been around the block several times on superhero business, as shown by his fight with an old foe that he's very familiar with. Throughout the book, he's constantly showing the two younger heroes involved in the crossover the ropes. He's gruff, and takes a bit to poke through and bond with, but he is a good man overall, and a great hero to boot. Gives the sickest quick speech before leaving into the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. A 3-page spread! Like, look at this! It's beautiful! 3 pages long! 3! How do you do that? I don't know, but you did it, and it's beautiful! But enough about Supermassive. I think it's time we move on to the actual Rogue Sun story, where we meet our intrepid hero once again fighting the good. Oh my god, he's dead! Yeah! Normally, I dance around these kinds of spoilers. However, this happens literally only 4 pages into the story, and serves as motivation for many of the characters we'll discuss going forward. So it's, just kind of impossible to look past, at least for this kind of video. So yeah, sorry for the spoiler, but Marcus dies! This means the event of the comic happened after Supermassive, But don't worry, you don't need to read that before reading this. It just kinda helps make this shocking start even more shocking and slightly more emotional, in my opinion. And hey, look at the bright side. Right after his death, we're introduced to the real main character of the comic. Dylan Michael Siegel. A high school delinquent who bullies his best friend, cheats anytime he can, and takes a cruel satisfaction in learning that his dad, Marcus, is dead. So yeah, not exactly the best person in the world, but in the kid's defense, neither is his dad. Apparently, Marcus left Dylan and his mom, Gwen Siegel, when Dylan was still a baby. He consciously stayed out of his son's life for the last 15 years, leaving Gwen to raise their child on her own. This gave rise to a lot of resentment and anger for both Dylan and his mother, especially when they learned that Marcus remarried not too long after. Now we're going to go on to later in issue 1, when Dylan and Gwen are invited to the reading of his father's will. This is when our main character inherits the Sunstone, making him, effectively, the new rogue son. And boy does he suck at it! But he also sees it as a huge opportunity, like winning the lottery. Sadly, the poor kid gets his ass kicked back to back very often, which his mom is not too happy about. Gwen is a fascinating support character, both for her role in the larger story and for her emotional connections to Dylan, Marcus, and the title of Rogue Son itself. She lets Dylan go around being the hero because she knows it's what he wants, and because she hopes it can bring out the good in him that she knows is there. That helping to save lives will teach the kids some proper empathy. And maybe some manners too while they're at it. I want to talk about her more. A lot more. But there are some serious spoilers included. Ones that I can't spoil. It's time to move on to Marcus's new family, the Bells. Juliet, the woman Marcus remarried. Ari, the eldest daughter. And Brock, the youngest son. We're still rather early on in the comic's life, and these characters have done some pretty story-relevant things that are crucial to the plot, so pardon their brief summaries. Out of the three of them, Juliet has been the least relevant. She's only had a few sparse appearances, but in each one she's made sure to leave one hell of an impact. Not exactly through her actions, but through her words. There is a real presence with her, an understanding and wisdom that I can't wait to see more of in the future. Ari is intelligent and knowledgeable about everything Rogue Son. She's familiar with multiple aspects of the Sunstone's powers, with Rogue Son's allies, and especially with his enemies. This knowledge makes her incredibly helpful, and yet, at the same time, very dangerous. Lastly, we have Brock, a smart kid, but, well, he's a kid. Impulsive to a fault, doesn't think about his words or actions before he commits, and is quick to a temper tantrum. However, he loves his dad. He misses his dad. Probably to a fault. And that's all for the regular cast of characters. And before I move on, I want to give a brief shout out to the bestie, to the myth, to the legend, to my favorite character in Rogue Son as of writing this. His name is Suave! The very first villain we meet properly in the series, and he rightfully kicks Dylan's ass with so little effort you'd think it was his hobby. Sadly, there isn't a whole lot to say about Suave either, but he's just so fun and mysterious that I had to mention him. Like, come on, who doesn't love bad guys that know how to talk and have an ambiguous sense of morality, with a sense of style, a sense of mystique, and a larger part in the story that we aren't even aware of yet. This dude is just the whole package, and I, for one, cannot wait until we see him again. Hopefully soon. He really is the best. Speaking of the best, Rogue Son as a series is quickly becoming one of those. The best series in comics, that is. One of the best, yeah. I personally would argue it's already there, with its stunningly unique art, engaging and innovative narrative, and how, like Radiant Black, the creators aren't afraid to try new and different things with their books. Spoilers for issue 7, but it's literally a choose-your-own-adventure book against a villain with time powers. Complete with its own unique twist on the concept, it makes for a fun and stunning read on its own. And I really hope they continue to do experimental stuff like that in the future. because these kinds of things add so much fun and creativity to these books. They show how far the creators are willing to go for their stories, how much faith and passion they have. Rogue Sun's very conception is proof that the creators have faith in what they're doing. In every way, this story is in direct contrast with Radiant Black, and that's awesome! Radiant Black is very sci-fi focused, higher concepts of technology and science. Rogue Sun, on the other hand, is high fantasy focused, medieval designs and occult concepts that would never be present in a Radiant Black story. And this very same type of contrast doesn't stop at just the setting. It goes deeper than that, to the art of the books, the storytelling methods used, the very characters that lead these stories. If you had given me these books on their own without any context of their connections, I never would have assumed they were from the same world. And that's beautiful! That's amazing! Radiant Black is allowed to be purely Radiant Black, while Rogue Sun is allowed to be purely Rogue Sun. These creators know the stories they want to tell, and they trust those stories to stand on their own for the better. Ryan, Abel, and the rest of the Rogue Sun team have brought their best to this book. It's astounding how quickly I became attached to these characters and the story. And I'm sorry. I know this last section has been a bit of a mess, and I'm gonna end this soon. But first, Rogue Sun, in the first 6 issues, is a terrific and nuanced tale of nature, nurture, and the choices we make in between. I've read the synopsis of future books, because that's just the kind of nerd I am, and they have me waiting with bated breaths. While I can't say for certain without the actual issues in hand, I have complete faith and trust that these books will blow me away. I can't wait to see where Dylan goes in the future, what challenges await him, and his struggle between who he thinks he is and who he'll choose to be. In the next tales of Rogue Sun, the perfect new age.